Hello everyone and welcome to the final game of the last day of the FTX Crypto Cup. It is the Armageddon game and this is the 7th game of day 2. So far, if you've been following what's been happening in the first match, Magnus started with a win, then Wesley retaliated and the other two games ended in a draw. So the first match was a draw and now whoever wins the second match will be the overall winner. So Magnus has the white pieces and like I said, this is an Armageddon game. In this match also Magnus started with a win with the white pieces, then Wesley immediately retaliated, and then two of the games were drawn. Third game was kind of a fighting draw, and the fourth game was just a repetition of moves in the openings. Neither of them really wanted to play and try and force something. They would rather go into tie breaks and play two blitz games. So in the blitz section, it was a bit different. There were no wins with the white pieces. Magnus won with the black pieces, and then Wesley again retaliated with the black pieces. Or maybe, let me just check. I think Wesley won the first one. Just a second. Yeah, Wesley won the first one, and then Magnus retaliated in the second one, and now it all comes down to this. This is the Armageddon game, and in Armageddon, there are different kinds of Armageddon, but in this one, Magnus has the white pieces, and he gets 5 minutes on the clock, but he has to win the game. Wesley gets 4 minutes on the clock, there is no increment, and Wesley can even draw the game to win the match, and Wesley was the one that chose the black pieces here. So, like I said, I'm a bit late to the party, so I'm only going to be covering the Armageddon game. I hope you guys enjoy it, and I'm not sure if you've seen, but I did post it on some of my social networks. As of yesterday, I became a father, so that's why I didn't record any videos. We were kind of busy, and I just want to let you guys know that. So it might have to switch my handle from agadmator to agadfather, but we'll still consider that one. So that being said, let's check out the game. And yeah, everything is fine. She's very healthy and fully operational. Yeah, she was born a month before due date, but seems that there are no problems. So that's always great. In case you were wondering. So now, getting back to the match, Magnus with the white pieces opens with e4. We have e5 by Wesley, knight to f3, knight to c6, and again bishop to c4. So Magnus banking everything on this Giuoco Piano. We have knight to f6. Here, Wesley probably avoided bishop to c5 because he knew that Magnus would probably go for the Evans Gambit because this is such an important game. So here, he played knight to f6 and now d3. We have bishop to c5 by Wesley, and now Magnus castles. We have h6 and now c3. So preparing b4, a4, just normal development. Knight b to d2, rook e1, knight to f1, knight to g3, and so on. So here we have castles by Wesley and now b4. We have bishop to b6 and a4 now, trying to trap the bishop with a5, so Wesley has to play a6, and now knight b to d2. So this is all very standard stuff, none of this is new. We have d6 and now rook to e1 by Magnus. Wesley shifts the knight over to e7, now the knight can come, for example, to g6, then later on to f4. And here there are some games where bishop to b3 was played, but here we have d4, and it is now, as of move 11, that we have a completely new game. So let's see how Wesley deals with this. He trades once in the center, we have captures, and now he strikes with d5. But now Magnus took I think a second to give his reply, and of course he just went e5. And here Wesley really started thinking, and you can't really allow yourself all that much thinking because, well, you start with a minute less, as this is Armageddon. Wesley had 4 minutes on the clock when the game started, and there is no increment. So the thinking here is not the way to go, especially not in the opening. So here we have attacking the knight here, and now knight to h5 by Wesley. You have to move it somewhere. You could go to e4, you could go to d7, you can go to h5. There's really not all that much time, so Wesley decides knight to h5 could be a good move. I mean, it's just as good as any other, it would seem. And Magnus brings the bishop back. He tucks it in for later, bishop to f1. Seems like a very passive square, but this bishop has saved many games, and not only is it a good defensive piece, you can also just bring it back for attacking purposes very quickly later on. So here we have knight to f4. Now it's possible because the bishop no longer controls the f4 square, and knight to b3 now by Magnus. We have knight e to g6, now defending the f4 knight, and now a5, pushing the bishop back. Bishop to a7, and only now Magnus trades here. He gives up his dark square bishop for this. Bishop captures, knight captures, and queen to d2. So he kind of developed his bishop and the queen, and now connected rooks, and now this all comes with tempo as the knight here on f4 is under attack. So knight back to g6, and now knight to c5. And this is now I wouldn't call it a monster knight just yet. It is an extremely strong knight, but maybe not a monster knight just yet. Well, it can be captured at any point. So here we have f6 by Wesley, trying to challenge Magnus's strong structure here in the center. And now Magnus could go for something like e6, and it does make sense since the knight also covers this square. The problem is if you go e6 now, then rook e8, and now for example, whatever you do, you can always, if you play bishop to d3 now, attack the knight, then the knight can come to f8, and that's a great square for the knight, also putting more pressure on the e6 pawn. So here, Magnus takes advantage of Wesley weakening the light squares, and he plays bishop to d3 right away, attacking the knight here. So you have to move it somewhere. The problem is, if you move it now, then e6 comes, and now it's a different position. The knight really doesn't have any good squares in the future, and black is without a plan here. So instead, Wesley tries f5, seems a bit better because, well, you grab more space and the knight can remain here. But now bishop to c2 by Magnus. We have rook to e8 now, and now g3, just controlling this knight here, saying that the knight will have no squares in the future. And now Wesley, for the lack of a better move, decides to capture. You could maybe waste some time with some like queen to e7, but he wants to eliminate the defender of these squares and at least try to develop his light square bishop. So bishop captures on c5, we have b captures on c5, and now bishop to e6. Nicely developing, but it's more of a pawn than a bishop right here on e6. So here we have rook 8 to b1 as the target has presented itself, and rook to b8 now defending. We have rook to e3. Now Magnus can shift the rook over to b3 to put more pressure on the b file, and it's always a problem with this b7 pawn because the a pawn and the c pawn really make it just a everlasting backwards pawn. You're never pushing this anywhere. So here we have knight to e7, and now rook e to b3, threatening to just win material here. Wesley defends it. You could also try with the bishop, but it's not much better. There's really nothing you can do here now. It's just the rooks are completely cut off from the game. The queen does nothing. The bishop also not all that impressive. You could go something like knight h4, put more pressure on the f5 pawn, and just continue mounting pressure. Later on, you're going to play queen e3, you're going to push the pawn to e6, and good things will happen. So instead, after this rook e to b3, we have queen here. Wesley deciding to keep the bishop on e6, and now comes knight to h4. So everything is nicely defended now. This is defended, this is defended, the g6 square is defended, and now Magnus goes... Wesley goes rook to f8 now. So if you can get f4 in, maybe you will still have some chance. But if you just wait and hope that Magnus will lose on time or something, then it's not going to be... it's not going to be a great game for you. So here we have knight to g2, also a possibility because now the knight also covers the f4 square, and bishop back to d7 now. We have h4 by Magnus, now bishop to a4. Finally, the bishop comes alive, but Magnus doesn't really care. He has other plans. He pushes the rook back to b2. We have captures on c2, queen captures, and now knight to c6. So it seems that Wesley has... had some success in developing at least the knight here, now attacking this pawn. Now maybe the queen will be able to move, but you always have this b7 pawn hanging, and there, if you allow this to be captured, then it's just game over. So here we have queen to c3. Magnus just defends this and says, okay, what do you play here? And Wesley has a couple of ideas. He could play something like knight to e7 and just wait, but then, for example, knight to f4, and it's really a problem. Now the knight has to be here defending this pawn, and if you try something like c6, then h5, and now all of the squares have been taken away from black. You're again gonna play the rook to b6 and just start taking away more squares from black's pieces. So it's just going to be a very, very slow and painful death. After queen to c3, however, there was also this very, very nice f4 move, and it's maybe the kind of move you have to play if you want to stay in the game. For example, after knight captures, you're going to play queen to g4 now, saying that, okay, now I'm going to play rook captures on f4 because the g pawn is pinned, and also if you move the knight, then my queen and the knight are attacking the pawn, and this is the base of your pawn chain. If I grab this, it's going to be great. The problem is you can just defend with queen e3, you guard this knight, and now you give up, for example, the a5 pawn. So now knight captures on a5, knight captures on d5, and you maybe you would have more success playing this now. You do have a passed a pawn, but it's still a very, very hard position to play. So what can be done here? And also, if knight to c4, just attacking the queen and the rook, you don't gain anything because queen b3. And now if the rook is captured, now you have a beautiful discovery here. Knight to f6 check wins the queen. So there are a lot of possibilities here, but it's a blitz game with no increment. Of course, it's not possible to see such things, but we will mention them if they are interesting, such as this one. So here, Wesley didn't go for the f4 idea. He didn't go for the like knight to e7, a waiting move. He went g5. So he said, I'm gonna really go active here. So here Magnus played h captures on g5. We have h captures on g5, and now f4. Making room for the king. And now you can move the king to f2, and you can start bringing your rooks into the game. So here, if you capture, then we're just gonna play knight captures on f4, and again, it's a really, really bad position for black. The rook is coming into the game. The queen can also join very easily, and it's just gonna be a very nice attack against the black king. There's not much you can do here. So instead, after f4, we have king to g7. Now Wesley wants to counter the rooks on the h file. He knows, of course, what Magnus is planning. King to f2, and now comes rook to h8. Wesley could also try something like g4 and completely try and close off the position, and then allow maybe Magnus to play rook to h1, and maybe it's possible. Maybe if you just keep everything blocked, maybe you will survive this, but he decided to play it actively. He played rook to h8, but now we have f captures on g5, we have rook to h2, and now queen to f3. So what do you play here? Magnus just gave up the d4 pawn, so Wesley grabs it. There's nothing better here. Knight captures, now attacking the queen. Queen captures on d5, and now knight back to c6. And here, Magnus has a few ways of playing this. For example, you could try something like king to g1. This is a very tricky move. And now after the rook moves, now you can play knight to f4. And it's a very hard position to play for black. There's not much you can do here. But instead, we have e6 by Magnus, now cutting off the queen from the game. Also, now you can pick up the f5 pawn, and it's much easier for your pieces to get into the attack. So queen to d8, now Wesley offers a queen trade, and Magnus well, he accepts, but he accepts under his own terms. He plays queen to d7 with check. So now what do you play? You have to capture the queen, otherwise you're just going to start losing material here. So queen captures, we have pawn captures, and rook to d8, now preparing to eliminate this pawn. But now Magnus just defends it. Rook to d2, and this is still a backwards pawn. You will not be able to defend this. So here, knight to e5, and now comes just rook captures on b7. There is nothing you can do here. We have king to g6 by Wesley, and here Magnus played rook captures on c7, and it was in this position on move 44 that Wesley so resigned the game, and with this, the entire finals match. So after such an excruciating task of facing all of these players one after another, Magnus was finally able to face Wesley in the finals and win. Because if you remember, the two of them, this is their third encounter in the finals, and the first time that Magnus won, Wesley won the first two. So I thought it'd be it'd be so impressive for Wesley to win the third one. Then, like I said, we would really have to question Magnus's ability to, exact his dominance as the world champion. But yeah, Magnus won here, so very, very nicely done. Congratulations on this amazing achievement. And it wasn't easy, because every time he would win, and then Wesley would bounce back, and that's not an easy thing. you know, usually when Magnus starts with a win, most players just collapse. There are, of course, a few top players that are able to withstand the pressure, but Wesley always withstands the pressure, and like he's shown here, that was pretty awesome. But yeah, in the blitz section, it was Wesley who started with a win, and then Magnus bounced back, so that was also really crazy. But yeah, here you resign because there's not much you can do. You're down material, and to give you an example, for example, king captures on g5, we could grab this, but now rook to d6. Now we're going to eliminate this pawn, create another pass pawn. We already have this pass pawn, this pass pawn. There's not much you can do. Black would have to trade, for example, and then we happily trade, captures, and now play c6. And that's it. The two pass pawns are now connected after black plays something. Let's say king g6 starts bringing the king into the game. We're gonna play rook to c8. Now just offer a trade of rooks, because if black doesn't agree to this, we're gonna capture his rook, and otherwise that's just it. We bring a queen into the game. If knight f7, we can just trade and play this, and that's it. Wherever the knight moves, we're just gonna bring a queen into the game, then the second queen, and so on. So yeah, congratulations to Magnus on winning the entire event. Very nicely done. Wesley also played incredibly impressive, and this is I mean, it's just incredibly enjoyable to be able to get such a treat to watch these players, and you know, just brawl it out. And there was, like, they played 7 games, two of them were draws. I mean, it's pretty crazy, with 4 decisive games and then a decisive Armageddon. But yeah, once again, hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Fergus Duncan, Kiran Madev, Francis A. Andreas Rosenthal, and Jadip Chipalkati for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the Morphy saga, checking up on your wonderful suggestions, and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.